You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm Murph, here to steal Rachel's thunder.
You stole
introing
my
the
line.
podcast. I did.
Well, hi, I'm Rachel Weeks, and I normally say that. Welcome to the episode. We are talking about the jump scare Precon from the brand new Duskmourn House of Horror set.
That's the green-blue one. Very exciting.
It's got Manifest Dread is the big mechanic that it's built around. Once again, we're back in the green-blue landfall space. We're going to give you 10 cards to add to this deck to get it in fighting shape. We'll tell you the 10 cards to take out, and we'll go through everything that you get if you just buy this deck off the shelf. But if you want to buy this one off of the digital shelf, go to cardkingdom.com/command, and you can support the show while you're doing so using that affiliate link. Doesn't add anything on your end, but it does help us. So it's a nice, easy thing to do. Plus, Card Kingdom has a huge selection of singles, sealed product, everything that you need to be a modern-day Commander player. There's so many cards and so many different versions and foilings and conditions. It's nice to shop from a place that has a huge selection of cards, so you can get as many of the cards you're looking for in one place, get them shipped to you professionally and safely, arrive on your doorstep in one tidy package. Again, support the show and pick up some cool cards over at cardkingdom.com/command.
And if you go to ultrapro.com/command or just get Ultra Pro products at your local game store, you can get all of the sleeves, all the playmats and everything that can match your Zimoun deck or whichever Precon deck that you've ended up picking up from Duskmourn House of Horrors. And you can get all sorts of other neat things. You can get other accessories, dice, card binders, anything like that. So they also have the really excellent looking Mana 8 stuff. It's like pure white with mana symbols on it. Very clean looking. All awesome stuff. They got fire sales on there all the time. So bookmark that page, ultrapro.com/command. Just keep an eye on things going there. See if there's anything that you could ever want or need, because if you're a Magic player, chances are there probably is.
You're going to need some stuff. And then go over to patreon.com/commandzone where you can support us directly. All of our patrons get access to game nights, extra turns a day early. Plus, you get to hang out on the Discord, talk to me, Josh, Jimmy, Murph, the whole team. If you have questions about an episode on the podcast, if you want to just do a recap on one of the gameplay episodes, we're all in there talking about stuff. There's a special channel just for asking questions of one of the hosts, and it's really fun to get in there and talk with you. So join our Patreon. Plus, we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode, and this one is dedicated to Eric Jeff. Is it Eric or Jeff?
Those are both names.
Or both.
Both names, yeah. I mean, I guess technically a first name and a last name are both names too. Like my name's Josh Murphy.
You could name somebody Murphy.
Yeah. I mean,
Eric Jeff, you rock.
Thank you so much. All right, main topic, Precon upgrades. You know the drill by now. 10 cards in, 10 cards out is how we're going to be going about this Precon upgrade. We have a total budget of $50 for this one. So, yeah, that's basically all there is to it. Zimoun is the face commander for this deck. Can you read that, Rachel?
I can. Zimoun, Mystery Unraveler. This is 2 green-blue for a legendary 3/3 human wizard. She has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, manifest dread if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. Otherwise, you may turn a permanent you control face up. It continues. To manifest dread, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature and the other into your graveyard. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So the first time a land comes in, you look at the top 2. You pick one of those to go onto the battlefield face down. The other one goes into your bin. Then if you crack a fetch or if you ramp, you play a second land in some way, you get to flip up any of your face down permanents right back onto the battlefield. This is super neat design.
Yeah, it's really fun because you are kind of doing like cheating of mana costs. You are getting like pseudo card advantage because you're getting something from the top of your deck into play. And then you do also have that possibility of turning it face up if it's something cool or neat. As long as it's a permanent, that's basically cheating of mana. And even if it's a land, well, now you have quote unquote ramps, even if that land is not getting yourself another landfall trigger or anything like that.
This feels like a big creatures ramp deck. So
Yes.
I would expect all of the ramp in this deck to be land-based or extra land drops. I would expect this deck to be full of 5, 6 plus mana creatures that you're going to cheat into play.
You want a cool top end with this type of deck.
And you want ways to get 2 lands into play at instant speed because you can trigger this on anybody's turn.
Yeah, notably if you are trying to get like 3 landfall triggers, 4 landfall triggers, 5, whatever it might be, you're still only doing the flip once you have gotten past
you're just
that
manifest.
second one. Yeah. So you're no longer manifesting, you're just flipping on the second, flipping on the third, flipping on the fourth, so on and so forth.
Oh,
so
okay. You only manifest the first time,
Correct.
then you flip up the rest. That makes sense to me.
So you want 2 landfalls, maybe 3 sometimes, but that's really what you're going for in this type of deck.
Before we move on, we want to meet the backup singer of this deck. We want to talk about the second commander that could be in the command zone. This one is Kian, Corrupted Memory.
Yeah, it's 2, a green and a blue for an illusion. As long as its power is even, you may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash. As long as its power is odd, you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. And whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on it, and it is a 2/2.
This is so weird.
What a weird card, yeah.
So if you cast an opt at instant speed, you scry, you draw, you put a counter on Kian. Now you can cast creature spells at flash speed.
Yes.
If you flash in, like, let's say the frog that draws a card, like it comes in, you draw a card, you put another counter on Kian. Now you can flash in your non-creature spells.
Yeah, so you have to be like continuously drawing cards and...
So it's a draw-go,
Yeah.
entropy, instant speed deck. What does that have to do with Zimone?
Not really anything as far as I can tell. Like Zimone's not really drawing cards. It's putting stuff from the top of the deck into play.
What an odd duo.
Yeah. Well, it does have odd or even, so.
That's
But yeah.
It's very interesting. I mean, I just think this deck looks totally different. The double land drops don't really matter. The ramp doesn't really matter. You want a ton of cantrips and stuff that is better at flash speed.
Yeah, you're looking more at like a control deck that basically has a Vidalcan Orrery in the command zone.
Yeah. It's very
That you're
interesting.
kind of controlling with your spells and abilities.
Well, let's get into the deck. Let's talk about what comes in the box off the shelf, so we get to know what the 99 is doing, and we'll tell you which one we think goes in the command zone for this deck. The first thing that we're going to do is get into the notable reprints. That's all the reprints over $5.
And this one definitely has some spicy ones. There are 7 total in this deck that are $5 or more. The biggest one is AC, Tyrant of Gyre Strait, at $35. I cannot believe that AC is that expensive.
That's also the first non-foil printing of AC, is that right?
Yeah, I don't believe it's been printed at all since its original printing in Commander Legends Precon Commander. Wasn't it like a budget Commander deck too? That was like $20 or something?
Yeah, they were $20 off the shelf.
So-
The red, white one and the green, blue one. And yeah, AC costs more than their whole deck at this point.
That's kind of crazy.
Really, really powerful in this deck. I love that it's a 6-drop and it has to do with lands. It's huge. I mean, that makes... Just that alone is like, oh, this is a Zimone deck.
Yeah, slam dunk reprints. It is a very, very powerful card, like you said. And yeah, that's definitely something that you want to be flipping off of the top and then cheating into play.
Up next is the Shyish Soul of the Wild. It's a $20 card at this point. Really, really powerful. Also seems very good with Zimone.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Augur of Autumn is... Oh,
one more.
World Spine Worm is the next one at $8. Slowly creeping up there. A big fatty. It's a big old 15/15 with trample.
Well,
Hooray!
that's certainly not for Kian.
Definitely not, no.
All right. We've got Augur of Autumn is up next. You can play cards off the top of your library, lands, and creatures as long as you have Coven. That one is currently sitting at $6.50. A nice little reprint. We're going to speed through the rest of these. We've got a Scoot Swarm, which you know you hate. It's $6.50. Hydra Omnivore, when it deals combat damage, deals damage to all your opponents, is sitting at $6. And Overwhelming Stampede caught another reprint and is still at $6.
Lots of good stuff that goes in a lot of different types of commander decks. So I really like the breadth of stuff that they are putting in the reprints for this deck, and hopefully bringing some of the cost down of some of these things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a pretty decent list of reprints.
Yeah, definitely.
7 of them over $5. Let's look at that total reprint value. Before we give away the number, I want to do our normal caveats. All of these prices, including the reprints we just listed, are taken before they are released. So the numbers that we're telling you are going to be naturally higher than the ones that you're seeing because the reprints will have been announced. So use these numbers relatively, compare them to other precons, not literally what you are getting off the shelf. It's all before announcements. Plus, it only takes into account the value of the 70 reprints in the deck, not the 10 new cards, the 2 main set cards, the 18 basic lands, and it doesn't include the 10 brand new archenemy cards that also come in each precon for Duskmourn.
So lots of value there. So overall reprint value for this is $142.50.
Pretty good.
That is really good, yeah.
That's pretty good. And if you buy it at $45, which is what these precons are largely pre-ordering for at this point, that means your bang for your buck is $3.17 worth of reprints for your $1 cash. So you're basically tripling your reprint value for every $1 American dollar put in.
Yeah, this is quite above average compared to like the reprint value that we were seeing last year. So it's, again, something that's really good to see in these decks. And I'm glad that that's something that like Wizards is focusing on, is trying to get all of these cards, because the more cards that come out, the more likely it is that some of these more expensive staples are going to kind of slip through the cracks. And so I'm glad to see all of these get reprinted. And yeah.
It's also worth noting that this is the second lowest reprint value out of all of the Duskmourn precons.
This is the second lowest?
Second lowest.
Whack.
Which means that the reprint value is quite high for Duskmourn overall. Something that we're very excited to see. Some nice, strong reprints there.
Yeah, you love to see it.
That's a look at the deck financially. We're going to talk about the deck mechanically. We like to break down the vegetables. Oh, going forward with the paper.
Forward. DJ always used to do that, where he would just like take it and just like send it forward. Yeah. So
a little fancy.
Channeling a little bit of DJ in there.
So we're going to talk about how the deck is broken down mechanically. First, we like to talk about the vegetables, but that means it's time to talk about the
stats.
Echoey one.
Yeah. Well, it's always supposed to be echoey.
I know.
Extra echoey.
Yeah.
This is an echo chamber.
Just went on a little bit long. The first section we're going to talk about is the vegetables in the deck. These are the things that you need in every commander deck to make it work. Well, let's go through this first section.
Yeah. First up, we have 18 pieces of ramp, which is good considering this deck cares about lands. You probably want to have lots of ramp.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense. Love to see it. 11 pieces of draw. Also pretty good, about where we want it. 7 pieces of interaction, a little bit lower than what we usually want to see, but not too bad. 3 total board wipes, 37 lands in total. Again, these all seem like relatively average. Nothing wild or crazy there.
Yep, 37 lands is on the lower end for me if I'm building a lands deck, but
that is a good point.
I would tip closer to 40 if I'm building a landfall deck, but that is me. More card draw, more lands is the direction I would move in, and the interaction is on the lower end. Up next, we're going to talk about what this deck has in it that make it run. So what makes it unique, so you get an idea for what the deck is actually trying to do. There are 10 cards in here that manifest or manifest dread. So you don't have to have manifested a card with Zimon's ability in order to use it to turn stuff up. So on the lower end, but says that is definitely a theme in the deck. There's 9 cards that care about being turned up or having other things get turned up around them. So that transformation is a huge part of it. And then there are 12 Lands Matter cards, which is a pretty strong sub-theme.
Yeah.
It says landfall is very...
It says landfall on the commander, so of course Lands Matter is going to be a thing.
And then there's 5 cards that put +1/+1 counters on your creatures. So that says we're probably winning through combat.
Does interact a little bit more with the backup commander, more so than the base commander.
But it definitely says that Kian is less supported in this build. We've got a lot of 19 slots that are dedicated to putting things face down or turning them up. So that is a bird's eye view of what this deck is doing. I want to zoom in a little closer and talk about what the best engine cards are in this deck. If you draw them, you're like, all right, now the deck is going.
Yeah, so specifically focusing on Zimone, I think the best cards that you want are cards that like keep that engine going of being able to play a land or play the second land, get something in for free, and then being able to do that every single turn. Because once you stop doing that, then everything just kind of falters and falls apart.
Sure.
So trying to keep that going is very, very important. So a card like Trail of Mystery, which is a 1 and a green enchantment, whenever a face-down creature you control enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. There's more text on that pumps face down stuff when it's turned face up. A little bit less important. We mostly care about the fact that it's going in and getting a land. Meaning, as long as you have a land initially, once Duskmourn comes out and you have Trail of Mystery out, you can play that land, manifest, dread something, comes into play face down, go get a basic, and then at base level, you have that land to play for next turn. And that'll just like continue as long as those pieces are on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very strong engine. There's only 18 basics in the deck, so I guess you got to be a little careful about running out at some point.
Only 18?
I mean,
Rachel,
think about how often...
There are so many people out there that are like, what do you mean by only 18? I have like 5 basics in my deck.
There's so many ways to search lands in this deck, and this is like if you're trying to do this every single turn, you better have the basics to go fetch. I love this as a great engine piece. Clearly, this is playing the long Simic grindy value game.
Yeah. Similar to that, another card that I really liked was They Came from the Pipes. This is a new card.
One.
It's a 4 and a blue enchantment. When it enters, manifest Dread twice, and whenever a face-down creature you control enters, draw a card. So it's doing much the same thing as Trail of Mystery, of it's keeping your engine going, but it comes stapled to you are manifesting Dread twice, gives you a lot more selection with things that you could potentially want to turn face up. It's basically 5 mana for 2 2/2s and 2 cards, because when those 2 2/2s enter, it's going to draw you 2 cards.
I mean, that's a great rate, especially on an ETB.
Yeah, just at face value, that's a good rate, and then it also just fuels your strategy going forward. So always happy to see this card whenever you're playing this deck.
Worth noting, with your commander, it doesn't have to be a creature to turn it up. So with a permanent-based stuff is going to be better in a Duskmourn deck. If you have They Came from the Pipes and you hit it off of one of the 2 cards that you manifest dreaded, you could put it face down and flip it up with your commander's ability.
Yeah.
You don't get that enters trigger where you manifest the 2 cards, but you still have the permanent on the battlefield that cares about the next time that you manifest or manifest.
Yeah, it's much better than having an instant or sorcery in that slot for sure.
So more permanents, more better in this deck.
We like.
From there, so we've definitely decided on Duskmourn. I think the reprints and the deck sets show that she is fully what the deck is built around.
Yeah, especially given that we have basically 20 card slots dedicated to the face-up, face-down type of stuff already at base level.
About at all.
Yeah, realistically, if you're only doing a 10 in, 10 out, you can't really run the backup commander and have the deck run all that well, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
It just won't be that cohesive.
But Duskmourn does seem to be pretty well supported. There's a lot of landfall stuff in the deck. There's a lot of stuff that cares about when these face-down creatures enter the battlefield. So what are we going to do to make this deck more powerful in our 10 in, 10 out upgrade?
So we need to do a lot of things to this. Basically, we need big things. We want awesome big things other than what's already in this deck. We've already talked about a couple like AC and the World Spine Worm, but we probably want to get lots more other cool things in there. Probably increase the consistency of getting lands into play, because you always want to at least hit 1, probably 2 on your turn, and if you can on other people's turns, because it has that restriction of it's not once per turn, but you only do the manifest dread once, and then after that point, it's getting you flip-ups.
Right. And finally, a little bit more top of library selection. Manifest Dread is good because you get to look at 2 cards and pick the permanent out of them.
There's already a little bit of like inbuilt selection for that.
Yeah, but like if you get stuck with a World Spine Worm in your hand, you really want ways to get it out of your hand onto the top of your library, or manipulating the top of your library so you hit your biggest permanent with that Manifest Dread trigger. So a little bit of top of library manipulation will go a long way in this deck. That's what we're going to do to make this deck more powerful. We're going to add 10 cards. We're going to take 10 cards out, and we're going to do all that after a few words from our sponsors.
We now convene a meeting of the Council of Triplers.
For damage, I am Jessica Thrice Reborn.
For tokens, we are O'Hare Talk.
And for mana, I am Nyxbloom Ancient.
Today, we add a new member to our ranks.
Welcome, Liquid IV, the hydration multiplier that delivers 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Times 3, praise be.
I drink it before battle to keep focused and alert. 1 stick of Liquid IV plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Just tear, pour, live more.
I ramp up for my autumnal color change with their hydration multiplier plus energy. It includes natural caffeine and comes in delicious flavors like blackberry peach.
We drink it for long plane rides. We like guava.
So 3 cheers for Liquid IV, because doublers are good.
But triples is best.
Start a new fall ritual with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code COMMAND at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code COMMAND at liquidiv.com.
Gobbos and gremlins of all ages, it's me, Tago, Goblin, Weaponsmith. When I came up with my hit invention, the rock, everybody thunk I'd never do no better. I mean, what beats rock? Paper? Ridiculous. But now I done it. I transformified rock into pet rock. I'm gonna make me $1 million. Good thing I got Shopify. See, I wanna spend my time thinkifying new products, not Shopifying my old ones. That's what Shopify do. They're the business behind the business. They make the selling part easy, so I'm free to come up with even bolder boulders. I mean, before I had Shopify, I could only pedal my pebbles as far as I could chuck them. But now my reach is global. Best part, they got the #1 checkout on the planet. So it ain't no wonder brands like Allbirds and the Command Zone use Shopify. Now I can find homes for Rockbird, Roctavia, and Rocco.
I'm real, not a rock.
Because businesses that rock sell on Shopify.
Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/TCZ, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/TCZ to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/TCZ.
Browsing for some new tech?
Yeah, I'm building Tiamat and ARCHIDEKT. Ooh, how about Zergo and Ojutai?
Did you just drag and drop that card image directly into your deck?
Yep, with ARCHIDEKT, you can drag and drop card images from EDH, Rec, or Scryfall directly into the deck list. No typing required.
That is so cool.
Ooh, okay, check this out. I'm gonna drag and drop Dragon Storm into the deck, and then boom, I'm gonna drop a bunch of dragons on the battlefield.
A 9-drop, huh? Seems ambitious.
It was just for the pun. ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest Commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are upgrading the jump scare.
Ooh.
Precon. I love the name of this. I don't often like the names of these precons, I'll be honest.
I do. They're so fun. They're like so cheesy sometimes.
This one's so clever because you have this little manifest creature and then it can flip up out of nowhere. Is very cute and like
very thematic.
I love it. I think that's very clever. But they're like, get to the meat of it. All right, we're going to upgrade this deck. We're going to add 10 cards. We have use a budget of $50 and we're going to be limited to that. But it means we get to put some really cool cards in here. Typically, we don't manipulate the mana base of these decks too much because you can always improve a Precon mana base. But because this one is landfall themed,
spoiler alert, we're going to.
We're going to modify it a little bit. Let's get into it.
Yeah, just a little bit. So this deck already has Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse in here.
Mirrored Landscape, I think, was the other one.
Yeah, Mirrored Landscape as well, which is, kind of a fetch land. It's getting you those 2 basics, which you can do at instant speed, which is neat, but obviously pretty slow. So we want to add basically anything else that we can possibly get fetch land related without paying the fetch land price premium. And so Fabled Passage, hot off of a Bloomburrow reprint, is our first option at still about $6. This is probably the cheapest fetch land that you can get. That's, I don't know, feels like a big boy fetch land.
It's like an untapped fetch land.
Prismatic Vista is pretty expensive.
It's more expensive than regular fetch lands at this point.
Yes, definitely. So Fabled Passage is one that you will always love to see because, again, late, it'll come into play untapped. And just adding more fetch lands to this increases the consistency of it by so much. The amount of stuff that you can get from a single fetch land is kind of incredible because you don't get 1 trigger. Now every single land is 2 triggers. So this, alongside whatever kind of fetch lands you can jam in this deck, are perfect. I also included Escape Tunnel in this, which is only 25 cents. It's basically another Terramorphic Expanse or Evolving Wilds, but you can also sacrifice it and make one of your Manifest Dread face down boys into an unblockable face down Manifest Dread boy.
And then if you can hit that second landfall at instant speed, you can flip the Manifest Dread up and be like, oh, this was an unblockable World Spine Worm.
And there's nothing you can do about it. So that's going to be a little bit more of like a cute interaction. You'll probably only run into that occasionally, but
pretty cool.
Again, it is a fetch land, and fetch lands are just so incredibly good. Yeah, like we said, if you do it on the same turn and you really want to flip something, you can get those 2 with a single land drop. Or you can play it, hold it, and then wait until it goes to somebody else's turn, then crack the fetch. That basically just gets you a 2/2 for free.
Pretty good.
Which is pretty good. So fetch lands, awesome, amazing, jam them in.
Escape Tunnel, only 25 cents and really worth it in this deck.
Absolutely.
I was surprised that one wasn't included, but I was really surprised that this next one wasn't included in the deck.
Yeah, next up is Ghostly Flicker. It's the Tuna Blue instant. You can exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. Creatures and lands are the important part for this deck. So this is just such a workhorse card in this deck because at base level, I guess not even at base level, you just have so many options. You can flicker your own creatures. You can flicker your commander to reset it if you want to Manifest Dread again instead of flipping things over. You can flicker some of your face down stuff to get it face up. Bada bing, bada boom. You can flicker 2 lands, so then you get 2 commander triggers. Like, there's just so many different things that you can do with this.
Plus, it's only $1. It just feels like it's such a good fit into this deck that I'm really surprised it didn't catch a reprint in this deck. My favorite is definitely flickering a land and flickering a creature.
Oh, definitely. Because then you get a new Manifest Dread and then you get something face up.
Yeah, I think that's going to be... I mean, you could even like flicker a Manifest Dread and flicker your commander to protect her from a removal spell or something like that. There's so much flexibility here. I agree that for $1, Ghostly Flicker should be in this deck. Plus, it's on theme.
Yeah. And
it's Ghostly Flicker.
One thing that I've noticed with... that's a good point. Ghostly Flicker.
They could have done art on it.
I know. Would have been so good. Why don't you do that? It's right there. But one thing that I have noticed with the deck is that you do end up holding a little bit of mana open, specifically because with the Manifest Dreads, even if you can't turn it face up for free, we can always just pay the mana.
If it's a creature,
you can
absolutely turn it face up.
And so by bluffing a little bit of mana, that can go a long way to like prevent people from coming at you. So having a little bit of instant speed stuff to be able to take advantage of your commander's ability or bluff something else, I think is very important.
This next card definitely takes advantage of that aspect of the deck. Is that, you're going to be holding up some mana for cards like Harrow. Is a 2 and a green for an instant. It says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a land, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. They come in untapped. It's 2 lands at the same time at instant speed, which manifests and flip something up right away on an opponent's turn.
This is a pretty common theme, is that you really, really want to get lands into play on other people's turns, if you can, ideally 2 lands. And Harrow does that perfectly, leaves you up some more mana. If you want to bluff something, like we said, like for that Ghostly Flicker that we're adding, see, it's all coming together.
All comes together. Harrow, only $1.50. Plus, there's like a couple other versions of Harrow that are at instant speed that would slot very well into this. And honestly, they should all probably be in the deck.
It's just such a powerful effect.
It's a very powerful effect for what your deck wants to do. The biggest downside to adding cards like Harrow and Ghostly Flicker, of course, is they are non-permanents. Is really the only downside, in my opinion.
And the more that you end up doing that, then the less likely you are to hit something off of that Manifest Dread ability. So it's always a balancing act, but I think that these are very much like just powerful enough to eschew that downside.
I agree.
Yeah. So next up, we want to talk about the Beefy Boys.
Add some Beefy Boys.
So basically, whatever you want to put in, whatever big fun stuff you have lying around that you want to jam this deck, totally fine. But we
Eldrazi's,
or
just anything that isn't like an ETB and or a cast trigger. You're basically
probably
good.
Not
probably
the best.
not.
Actually, Credit Craft's probably still fine because you're going to have some 2/2s and stuff.
Nyx Bloom Ancient sounds cool.
Nyx Bloom Ancient. Yeah, but these are a little on the more pricey side. So
We've got some ideas for you.
Yeah, we're going to talk about stuff that's a little bit less expensive. First up is Ancient Green Warden.
So good.
This is the one that is a 5/7 for 6 mana. You may play land cards from your graveyard, but most importantly, if a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time.
How many times do we want your commander to trigger?
Twice.
How many times does this make a single land trigger?
Now.
And it's a 6-mana creature that doesn't have an ETB. It's very, very powerful. Helps you replay your Fabled Passage.
Oh, that's true.
And like there's a lot going on that Ancient Green Warden is really, really good at.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons that adding fetch lands also adds so much, is that the more types of effects that you have like this, of being able to play lands from your graveyard, interacting with landfall abilities, the more powerful the deck is going to become. And so Ancient Green Warden, if you can get it out, just like turbo juices the deck to the next level.
It's $10, but I promise this one's worth it.
Totally worth.
This was such a fun ad. I love it.
Yeah, so next up, Colossal Sky Turtle at 75 cents. What's that one, you might ask? Well, if you played Neon Dynasty Limited, then you might know what it is.
These turtles were the bane of my existence.
Yeah, it's a 7-mana 6/5. It's got Flying and Ward 2, and it has 2 channel abilities where you can discard it. For 3 mana, return target card from your graveyard to your hands, or for 2 mana, you can return target creature to its owner's hand. So this type of effect I think is really, really cool and neat in the deck. I think this is the type of card that you want a lot of your interaction to be. It's flexible enough that if it's in your hand or stuck in your hand, well, you can remove a creature. You can get a card back from your graveyard to your hand, which you will be doing quite a bit because you are like dumping probably good cards in
your
there.
Deck into the graveyard, yeah.
Any instant or sorcery or anything else that you just can't quite get into play, you can get back with this card. But if you cheated into play off the top of your deck, you're still pretty darn happy about that because this is a 6/5 flyer with Ward 2, hard to get rid of. Like, this thing just does so much work and is flexible at all stages of the game, no matter where it is in your hand, in your library. I guess it's not that helpful if it's in your graveyard, but
you can reanimate it.
You can reanimate it.
In green and blue?
Probably. That's probably a thing,
Probably
right?
not. Yeah, I mean, I love this include. I think what this says is you really want a high density of creature threats, of high mana value, big hits that you can flip up if you hit them off of your commander's triggered ability. So if you can get, interaction that's attached to a big thing, or if you can get recursion that's attached to a big thing, and it's not on an ETB, it's going to be really, really strong in this deck because it just makes everything work better. Like I have a Sidisi deck, which is when it mills 3 when it attacks, and if you hit a creature, you make a zombie. That's a similar.
You want a very high density of creatures.
I run 60 creatures.
That's a ridiculously high.
That's a ridiculously high. It's extra credit, but
you're a crazy person.
But it makes the deck work incredibly well. I do not miss on those. Like if I miss, I'm like, ugh, that was terrible luck. So if you're building this deck, you want it to be very consistent. You want big things, good things to cheat into play off of your commander, including this Turt, who's only 75 cents.
Yeah. Another big beater that we like is Soul of the Harvest. That's the whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. This kind of goes into they came from the pipes type of effect where you just want to be able to draw cards and keep that engine going, even when you're like getting that Manifest Dread, getting those 2/2s into play, because it doesn't say non-manifests to a creature. It just says non-token, which you aren't making tokens in this deck realistically. You are playing real big creatures, either from the top of your deck or occasionally from your hand as well.
Yeah, I think this is significantly better than even something like Beast Whisperer in this deck, because now every time you play a land, you also, that first one anyway, you also draw a card.
And this is an important distinction, right? Because Beast Whisperer says cast, and so you will not be getting the cards from that trigger or ability. It's only if you play stuff from your hand, which you will be doing sometimes, but you don't want to be doing nearly as much.
Yeah. Plus, it's only $2.75.
Good card.
Nice budget 6-drop. Also, it's a 6/6 with Trample. Colossal Dreadmaw.
Yeah. Colossal Dreadmaw's pretty good. I think it's the best card in Magic,
Pretty
right, Rachel? Right?
All right, we got to spend some of this budget, Murph. We've been very conservative.
Yeah, so let's make people spend some money. We want to talk about top deck manipulation, and if you're talking about top deck manipulation, the best card is Sensei's Divining Top, but we're not talking about Sensei's Divining Top.
No, I was going to say, we really said top a lot, and it's not top.
It's not top.
It's Scroll Rack.
Yes. And Scroll Rack, I think, is a much better include in this deck. If you put top in this deck, I don't think that that's a bad include, but I like Scroll Rack a lot because of the effect that you mentioned earlier, where it is quite possible that you just have a Worldspine Worm stuck in your hand. Well, what do you do with that? Well,
give us a refresher on Scroll Rack before we go too far.
Of course. So it's a 2 mana artifact, 1 tap, exile any number of cards from your hand face down, put that many cards from the top of your library into your hand, then look at the exiled cards and put them on top of your library in any order.
This is a $20 card.
Yes.
And I know you're like, why don't I buy a Brainstorm? That's $1.
You probably also should do that, but...
Probably. But what I like about Scroll Rack is obviously it's something that you can do repeatedly.
Yes.
But it's also a permanent.
Yes.
That you can flip off of your commander. I mean, you can manifest a Brainstorm and have a little 2/2, but that's not any good if you flip it up. So... having a permanent-based top deck manipulation gets those big things out of your hand, gets the best big thing on top of your library to hit that manifest trigger, and then you get to surveil away a card that you don't want to draw at some point. Scroll Rock can be rough because you can lock yourself out of drawing cards that actually matter, but Manifest Dread means you get to get some of them out of the way.
Yep.
Scroll Rack is excellent here.
And you know what else goes well with Scroll Rack? Fetch lands. Because then if there's cards that you don't want, well, you can just crack a fetch, shuffle all the cards that you don't want away, only keep the stuff that you want, then you can look again and stuff like that. So it's just so much utility for such a low cost, at least as far as in the game. It's financially it's the most expensive card that we're talking about today. But I think it is definitely worth an include if you're building this deck. This is the save up for and get this.
There's a couple more face-down support cards that we want to throw into this list. A few that came up recently, and one that's an oldie.
But a goodie. It's Secret Plans, 2-mana enchantment. Face-down creatures you control get +0/+1. But whenever a permanent you control is turned face-up, draw a card.
Yes.
Keeping that fuel going.
Love Secret Plans.
Don't know why it's not in this deck already.
It's only 25 cents.
Yeah.
It's perfect for the deck. It absolutely should go in.
But sure. This one, I understand why it's not in the deck, because it's a more recent card. Vannifar, Evolved Enigma. It's a 3/4 for 4 mana. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. You can cloak a card from your hand, which means you put it face down as a 2/2 with Ward 2, or put a 1/1 counter on each colorless creature you control. So this can also help with the problem of you have a Worldspine Worm or a big creature stuck in your hand that you just want to get out into play. This one kind of just skirts around the whole try to put it on top and then get your commander to trigger and then put it into play face down as a 2/2 and then turn it face up. This just makes it so that you can put it into play and then figure out how to turn it face up.
You can also get to a point in this deck where you're like, I've made 4 lands enter the battlefield this turn, but I've run out of manifest things to turn up.
Yes.
And Vannifar gives you an opportunity to just put one more thing into play face down. So it does a lot for you, not to mention it buffs your colorless creatures if that's, the direction that you need to go.
And those counters do stay if anything is turned face up, which is probably good to note because you're probably going to be making these big trampoline boys. How about make these big trampoline boys 1 or 2 bigger?
Seems pretty good. Vannifar, only $1, which brings the total upgrade to $43.50.
Watcha.
Pretty good.
Under budget.
Spend those $7 on yourself.
Or save up for more fetch lands.
Yeah, there you go.
They're pretty good.
2 Fabled Passages, please.
All right, here's my deck. It has 10 Fabled Passages in it. We can rule 0 conversation, right?
It's fine.
I think it's fine. Don't worry about it.
We've added 10 cards. That means we have to do the hardest thing in Magic, which is make 10 cuts.
Every time you come to me and you're like, hey, you want to do this upgrade with me? And I'm like, of course, I add these cards. I'm like, this deck is great. And then I have to get to the point of, some cards have to come out in order for these cards to go in. So,
and this deck does have some really cool things going.
Yeah.
So,
but also has some not very cool things going. So let's talk about both of those in these 10 cuts. So first up, we are going to at least replace 1 land because we added 2 lands. We're going to take 1 land out. I think the worst lands for this one. Usually we cut Temple of the False God, but I think given the amount of lands that you're running,
Hey, you're fine.
you're fine. Like Temple of the False God will do fine on that. The one that I thought was weird that is in this deck is Ash Barrens. It's the colorless land that has basic land cycling 1. What is this doing in the deck?
Fixing.
For your 2-color deck?
I don't know. It's weird. I run Ash Barrens in a number of decks. I like them in white decks because it's just like another cheap fetch that puts a land in your graveyard that you can reanimate later with a Sevin's Reclamation. This isn't a white deck.
The important thing is you did say that it was a fetch. It is not a traditional fetch where you put it into play, get that landfall trigger, and then get something else. You just cut it from your hand, put it into the graveyard. At no point is it ever going onto the battlefield. Which
Doesn't make a ton of sense.
That's why I find it like super weird in here.
Yeah.
So this
Ash Barrens is going.
Yeah, this is one that we liked the least out of the lands that were in here.
And note, we're only going to cut one of the lands. So now our land total is up 1 to 38, which is a little closer to what we want in a landfall deck.
Yep, we like it. So hopefully it should make the deck feel a little bit better. Next up, Cackling Counterpart. It's the create a token that's a copy of target creature you control with flashback 7, costs 3 mana. Yes, you are playing big creatures, but boy, oh boy, is it going to feel bad to... I don't know, like I guess you put this in your graveyard for Manifest Dread and you flash back for 7?
I think that's the idea, is you can flash it back from your graveyard and you can copy a big thing, and all of those things are fine, but it is also a non-permanent in your deck, so it's making your deck slightly worse, and it isn't super synergistic, so I don't think it needs to stay.
Yeah, very cool card, but I think it's a little bit too expensive for what it does.
Speaking of too expensive for what it does.
Biomass Mutation. That's the X to hybrids. Creatures you control have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. This is some way to just win the game with stuff, but we are playing with big creatures.
Yeah. Most of the time, if I have a World Spine Worm in play,
you're fine.
I'm going to make my World Spine Worm smaller by casting this.
That seems bad. Like, again, I understand why they put it in here is because you're trying to take these 2/2s and make those 2/2s into something bigger. But ideally, you have turned some stuff face up. Like the commander can very easily do that multiple times in a game if you build it right. And so I think that cutting Biomass Mutation for more consistent ways to turn things face up is a much better option for this deck.
Agreed.
Next up, Sandworm Convergence. Hello, my old friend.
He's always in these precons.
It's like this and Zetalpa are like the classic 8-mana Precon staples.
I would rather Zetalpa
I would rather
deck.
Zetalpa. Well, that's a little cheating, but...
Yeah, I know. A Sandworm Convergence says creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, sure. And at the beginning of your end step, make a 5/5 green worm creature token.
It's fine. It's a permanent that you can turn face up, technically speaking, but it's not really what you're looking for. You can do better. I believe in you.
You can do better. I believe in you.
Yay. Next up is a cool card, but don't know why it's in here.
A cool new one.
Yeah. Giggling Skitterspike. It's 4-mana indestructible. Whenever it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. It's a 1/1, but it has monstrosity 5 for 5. Yeah, neat card. That's about all I can say for this. This is definitely not its home.
Yeah, this feels really great in a deck that can buff its power. In a modular deck that puts a bunch of counters on this, in any +1/+1 counters deck. I think the idea is that you play it face down and then you flip it up and then monstrosity it and you surprise somebody and hit them for 6 damage, but that's 9 mana to do that. I think we can just do better here, and there's cooler homes for Giggling Skitterspike.
Yeah, or you could just play a 9/9 and attack them with the 9/9.
Probably that.
We love doing cute things, but this one is just a little bit too
indestructible
cute
blocker, I guess. You flip it up and you're like, ha-ha, got
so
you.
much mana, though.
I don't know.
Yeah, neat card design, but not for this deck. Next up, Kefnet the Mindful. That's the Tuna Blue flying indestructible. Can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in hand. It's got the pay 4 mana to draw a card, and you may return a land you control to its owner's hand.
That's what it's doing here, is bouncing lands to your hand?
Exactly. Just in case, I suppose, you really need that landfall ability, but you know what I would rather have? More cards in hand, more fetch lands.
Yeah,
there's so many more things that you would rather have than this ability. Because, again, it's 4 mana. If you are spending 4 mana to tempo yourself like this to pull a land back just to get a single trigger, and a card, I guess. You draw a card from this as well.
Sick.
Yeah, then you're probably not winning the game. You are probably doing very poorly in that game. So,
yeah, I don't love it here.
Kefnet, gone.
Up next is Skob Reuniter. This is one blue.
Ruinator.
Ruinator.
Yeah.
What did I say?
You said Reuniter.
Reuniter.
It reunites the zombie Skob.
The Skobs.
Together.
Hilarious. Ruinator. That makes more sense. It's a 3-mana 5/6. As an additional cost to cast the spell, exile 3 creature cards from your graveyard, and then it's a 5/6 with flying. You may cast it from your graveyard. The joke here is that you put this in the bin, and then you cast it from your graveyard after like Manifest Dreading it. But if we have 3 creature cards in our graveyard, we've been triggering this a lot.
Yeah, I feel like the joke more so is that you are cheating this in, quote unquote, with the Manifest Dread. You put this face down and then you can turn it face up.
Yeah. But then
you only have a 5/6 flyer. Again, you can do a lot better than that. And yes, it's only 3 mana, but this will get stuck in your hand a lot because you got to exile those 3 creature cards.
Stuff. Yeah,
and you don't want creature cards in your graveyard. You want them on the battlefield, ready to turn face up and beat face. Next up, Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter. This is the cast your first spell each turn. You can reveal a top card of your library. You can cast it without paying its mana cost if it's a spell with lesser mana value. And if you don't cast it, put it into your hand. So this card's not terrible.
Rashmi's good. I mean, This is a permanent base draw engine in the deck. The problem with this is she's better when you can move at instant speed, when you can manipulate the top of your library at instant speed, when you don't have like these huge, expensive creatures to cast.
Yeah, there definitely is some instant speed, especially some of the stuff that we've added for this deck to function, which definitely does make Rashmi a little bit better. But I think it's just not doing enough to the core theme of the deck for what you're trying to do in order for Rashmi to make the cut.
Yeah, I would just rather it's something that
reasonably
helps
close
with the land drops. I think Rashmi is sort of like the 10th cut.
Yeah.
But
we said it as the 8th cut, but realistically probably more like the 10th cut.
You're just not casting that many spells.
Yeah.
You know what this is really good with? Kian.
Yeah, maybe that would be a better fix for that. Yeah, absolutely.
The next one is Cittanul Hierophants.
Pretty sure that's how you say it.
Cittanul.
So the 4 mana creatures you control have tap, add a green creature. It's 3/2.
This is a token card.
Yeah, not this one. Like, what are you doing? Tapping your 2/2 manifests?
The way this deck ramps is by putting lands into play.
Yeah. Yeah, why is there... That's a good point. Why is there creature-based ramp...
It's weird.
In a deck that really, really wants land ramp.
It's a lands deck.
Every single piece of ramp that you have realistically should be land ramp in this deck. So the Hierophants.
Weird.
Gone. Out of here. And then the last one we cut is Kian, Corrupted Memory. Poor backup commander. She's good, but definitely not for this deck.
I want to see your builds of Kian. I truly don't think she is well served by this deck. No. So build something cool with her.
Yeah.
That's the upgrade. We've added 10 cards. We've taken 10 cards out. If you want to see the full upgrade in one place, if you want to goldfish with it, go to ARCHIDEKT. We'll have a link below that has the deck list, and you can playtest with their super awesome playtester. See how it feels. Add any cards you want to. Take them out. We hope you have fun. All right. We've done it. We've made the upgrades. How should our ARCHIDEKT playtesters expect this to play out?
Yeah, so one thing that you should probably do whenever you draw your first 7 is you want to make sure that you have some sort of land fetch in your hands. Try to hold as much of that as you possibly can in your hands. Sometimes it is correct to do it early. Sometimes it's correct to do it later once the Zamon is out. It does take a little bit of like testing and play testing to try to like get a feel for that, because the correct answer is not always immediately obvious. But for the most part, if you can, try to hold any like fetch stuff in hand. Definitely fetch lands if you can. Ramp on both turns 2 and 3. They seem bad at 3 because it's a 4 mana commander, but honestly, it's not that bad because then you get Zamon out on 4, and then you can play that landfall, and then you can start triggering your commander. So realistically, you're kind of at the same position as where you would be otherwise.
Yeah, you're not playing Zamona until you can hit that landfall. Ideally, hit that landfall twice.
Yeah, so the most ideal is you play Zamon, and then you still have a land drop to play, and it's a fetch land. That is the most ideal thing that you're looking for. So then any sort of instant speed land plays are excellent. I think one thing that's a little bit underrated with this deck is literally getting those 2/2s out. It can be very easy to focus on, I want to cheat things into play. I want to turn those things face up. But I think having like a good solid amount of 2/2 manifests on the board first is very, very important, because one, that gives you selection for what you're trying to turn face up.
Yeah.
Because if you only have like 2 things, well, then you only have 2 options. And that's from 4 cards from your deck. Probably not the best things in the world. But if you have 6, well, that gives you a lot more options, and it makes your opponents not sure of what you're going to do. So you attack with a bunch of 2/2s. They're like, I have no idea what they're going to do. They got a fetch lands that they can crack, or they got a couple of fetch lands they can crack to turn things face up. They have mana to be able to turn things face up manually. Like, your opponents will have a very hard time attacking into you, as well as blocking things that you are sending at other players.
Don't underestimate the power of a face down creature. Your opponents are going to be more scared of it than it is. They don't know that it's a scroll rack.
Yeah.
It could be a death touch creature that they can't block. Like, most of the time, those 2/2s are unblockable.
Yeah.
And they don't want to attack into them.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. It's a world spine worm.
That is the great thing about the instant speed trying to turn things face up, is because if it is a scroll rack and they're like, I block it. If you have that ability to turn it face up at instant speed with those 2 land fetches, great. Your scroll rack is fine. No harm, no foul with your attack.
Pretty cool.
So I think it's just very... It definitely takes like some feeling out to get the hang of this deck. But yeah, you just want to do that as much as possible. Get your board out as big as possible. Try to protect it if you can. Try to protect your commander, because a lot does hinge on your commander. So I think you just do that, get stuff out, and then overwhelm your opponents with 2/2s that are probably going to be bigger than 2/2s.
There's some very neat tricks that you can pull with this deck. I think there's a lot of directions that you can take it if you want to build more toward a controlling route, and that's your play style. That's certainly a way you could build it. If you want to build it more stompy, which is sort of how the deck is out of the box, I think you can absolutely go a stompy, like cheat an Eldrazi into play type of direction. She's more flexible than she looks, which is really neat.
Yeah, technically, you don't even have to do like a creature-based strategy. It could be an enchantment deck. Enchantments and lands. If that's what you really want. Go for it.
Permanent-based stuff is the move. Something we wanted to try for this episode is doing a section about where to take this deck after these 10 upgrades. If you want to build Zimone and really invest in the deck, what would you be doing? Where would you be spending your money long term?
Yeah.
Other than buying all the foils.
Yeah, because that's the great part about Commander and building Commander decks, is that they're like living, breathing things. Whenever you buy a Commander deck or build something from scratch, that is not its final iteration. You're going to continue.
My decks are never done.
Nope, never. You're going to try to continue to iterate, add cool new cards that you think would help the deck out, and just continue to invest your time and effort into this deck. So yeah, like you said, we wanted to take a look at what you want to do beyond these 10 upgrades. One thing that I would like to do is add maybe a little bit of protection for the commander, maybe a little bit of counter magic, lightning greaves. I think stuff like that could go a long way.
Sure.
For protecting this commander, because if the commander's not there, everything just kind of falls apart. Thankfully, you are a ramp deck, and so it's not the end of the world if your commander dies. You should be able to have enough mana to bring it back out, but I think it definitely could use a little bit of counter magic / protection up in there.
Yeah, you're in blue. You might as well. And green. Green's great at protecting your board and your permanents.
Yeah, to be fair, most decks could probably use a little bit more protection in them to try to protect your game plan.
Yeah.
And plus, you want to be able to protect the big things that you are also turning face up. So it's kind of a no-brainer. More fetch lands. The more you can invest in fetch lands, the better this deck will get.
I agree. I mean, it's just the cheapest way to trigger your commander. And like, it doesn't have to be the super expensive ones. A lot of them have been reprinted lately. If you're going to buy a fetch land, now is kind of the time to do it.
Yeah.
But any land that sacrifices itself to get more lands into play just simplifies your whole problem that your commander creates.
Yeah, so I'd look at the mana base a lot more heavily and be a lot more critical of like what actually makes the cut, and try to get basically as many fetch lands, even probably off-color fetches, as much as I hate to say it. That'll just make the deck a heck of a lot more consistent.
Yeah.
Then you're getting those second fetch lands. And then probably more hero type effects. Like we had mentioned, it's just so good for the deck. Instant speed, 2 lands. We've already been over that.
Yeah, and it works really well with the counter magic that you're talking about.
Yeah, and then probably invest in more higher end threats. If you don't already have stuff in your collection that you like or you find super interesting, the stuff that we talked about is not the most oppressive stuff in the world. So the higher end threats you can really scale to your playgroup. If your playgroup is super cutthroats and you want to be able to one-shot somebody, throw in a Blightsteel.
Woo!
Or any
That is a jump scare.
That is a jump scare for sure. Hey, I love one-shotting somebody with Blightsteel Colossus. I have to admit it. I'm a man of culture. What can I say?
Same.
Yeah.
I got to kill somebody with a Blightsteel Colossus off of a Pandemonium once.
Woo,
and
that is nice stuff.
Done.
So, as the deck stands, the high-end, top-end threats are they're pretty modest. So you can definitely scale that up, again, depending on how scary you want the deck to be. You can, as it stands, the deck is not the most threatening. The World Spine Worm's like the worst you can do.
Yeah, and even that's like 15 trample damage, and that's it.
Yeah,
you know,
which
like
is good, but that's definitely not going to make you the immediate threats. The problem of putting a Blightsteel in there is because then people have to treat your deck as if you potentially always have a Blightsteel, and so then you might get targeted and focused a lot more early on.
You know what's funny would be like a pretty good threat in this is Giant Adaphage. Because it's a combat damage trigger.
True.
On a giant thing, and it like everybody blocks your Giant Adaphage or kills it. But if you can flip it up and get that first Giant Adaphage, then you're cooking.
Yeah, as the Scoot Swarm problem of once you get that other Scoot Swarm into
now
play,
you're good.
Then you're good, and then people have such a hard time getting rid of it.
Yeah, now there's two you have to remove.
Yeah, it's board wipe or you can't really get rid of it. So with Giant Adaphage, once you get that second one into play, which you can potentially just kind of cheat through because people are like, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to block it.
The funny thing is, there's a Giant Adaphage in the green-black Precon from Duskmourn, but not in this one.
Why is it in that? I feel like it should be in this one.
It's a little weird in the green-black Precon, but it's very good in this one. So take it out of Death Toll and put it into Jump Scare. And
yeah, if you're buying all four of them, just make that
just
swap.
do a little shuffle.
Super easy. So the deck is very customizable.
Yeah,
like
there's
you
a
said.
lot of ways
you
could go. I mean, you could fill this deck with Death Touchers and be like, try.
Yeah.
Come at me. See what it is. Let's find out. It's probably something terrible.
Yeah, because the thing I like about Zimone is you don't have to make it a face-down deck, per se.
You just use some of the cool face-down engine cards.
Exactly. So it's very flexible. You can do a lot with this deck, and I'm very excited to see what everyone out there does with it.
Yeah, see, this conversation has gotten me like, what would I put into it?
I know, right? That's a good to the listeners question, don't you think, Rachel?
To the listeners. What would you put in this deck? A threat?
We're so good at segues.
Is it a defensive? Is it like the bug that when you deal Hornet's Nest? Seems sick.
That's pretty awesome.
That's so cool. Is it a Hornet's Nest? Is it a Blightsteel Colossus? Let us know what you want to flip up with Zimone.
The Hornet's Nest and then turn it face up.
And be like, you blocked.
Oh, what a good idea.
Bees!
You blocked bees is going to be the name of my fantasy football team name.
Oh, any cards we missed to add? Hornet's Nest. Any cards we suggested to take out or add that you disagree with, that you're like, no, we got to keep Kian in there. They're best friends. That's totally fair. Let us know. You can pick up any of the cards that we mentioned to add Hornet's Nest or Blightsteel Colossus. Those are the only two cards I can remember. Harrow, very good in this deck. Go to cardkingdom.com/command. And when you do so, you're supporting this show and supporting Zimone. She needs some cool new threats and some fetch lands for sure. If you go to Card Kingdom, they have a huge selection of those singles that you're looking for. You can get exactly the fetch lands you're looking for. You could get the Expedition ones if you fancy. You could get the reprinted ones if you just want fetch lands, which is my move. You could get old damaged first printing ones if you want, and that's your style. It's cool how customizable a deck can be, even when you're just buying the same card. That's part of my favorite part about building a deck is choosing exactly the right card for the deck and for the mechanics of the deck. That all makes sense. You got it. Card Kingdom has a huge selection and can get you exactly the card that you're looking for. Plus, they get shipped to you safely, soundly, so the card that you order online is the one that shows up on your doorstep. Again, support the show and pick up some sweet cards for your new deck over at cardkingdom.com/command.
And the other best way to be able to customize your deck is with ULTRAPRO products because they just have such a huge selection of stuff and accessories that you can use to bling out your battlefield, protect your cards, dice, sleeves, playmats, all that stuff. They have the Mana 8 product, which looks super slick. It's nice and minimalist. It has like that bright, like classy looking white.
Yeah, they're great for conventions because you can get them signed or doodled on.
Yeah, that's what Josh and Jimmy were saying. They were like,
I love, like, I signed a couple of them and it's so crisp. You can read everything. It's in the same pen. It looks really nice.
It's so nice because when people are like, hey, can you sign this? Hand a black Sharpie and it's just like a dark playmat. And you're like, it's not going to look that great. I'll do my best, but here goes nothing. But if you have those Mana 8 playmats, you know for a fact that it's going to look awesome as long as you have a Sharpie that has ink in it. So ultrapro.com/command, all that to be said, is the best place to go and get those products.
All right, we're going to move to the end step. Talk about something outside the world of Magic. I'm jump scaring you with this end step. Do you have something that you're working on outside of Magic?
Yeah, actually.
Or having fun with, I suppose?
Yes. So some of you might know Cal previously of the Playing with Power. And Cal's been doing all sorts of awesome stuff. He started
He's been so busy
starting his own Magic podcast. We actually started a video game podcast because normally this is where I would talk about video game stuff, but I'm now going to say, hey, we started a podcast.
Go to my podcast, The End Step.
It's called Level Up Podcast. It's all about like classic video game collecting. Cal and I are both big into video games and the collecting space. Cal has a kind of ridiculous GameCube collection. He has like
collection of actual game cubes.
I mean both, but the collection of actual GameCubes is definitely the coolest. He has like this Japanese only one called the Panasonic Q, which is a GameCube and a DVD player all built into one. It looks bizarre, super cool, super neat, really rare, really expensive. So yeah, we've just been talking about all sorts of awesome video game stuff. So if you like all the video game conversations that I occasionally bring to the table, then we made a whole podcast about it. Level Up Podcasts, all the stuff about that will be in the description if you want.
Love that. I go listen to Magic Sweeties talk about old
video games. You know what's funny is we're not going to talk about Magic rule on the podcast.
How quack did you break it? Yeah,
all the time because we're like, this is kind of like that thing in Magic. I'm pretty sure we're like 6 or 7 episodes in, and I could make like a compilation of like
all the times you broke that rule.
15 times, of us breaking that rule.
Look, the first date I went on with my boyfriend, we were like, no Magic.
Oh, no.
Because we knew we both play Magic, and we were like, if we talk about Magic, we'll have a great time. We have to talk like people, or this isn't a date.
Did you talk about Magic?
A little. But after, it was like we set a timer.
Did you actually? That's adorable.
So nerdy. Before we go, we're going to say a big thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Thank you to Eric Lem, Rachel Kender, Gaurav Galati, Jamie Block, Jordan Pridgeon, Jake Boss, Manson Lung, Karina Cruz, Jared Robinson, Sebastian Salazar, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, Josh Lee Kwai, Jimmy Wong, and to Josh Murphy for taking the time to upgrade the Jump Scare Precon with me. Talking Zamone. I've always liked this character. It's cool to see her all grown up and fighting ghosts.
Awesome character. Awesome deck.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for watching / listening. I didn't get it all the way off.
Get it.
We've done it.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, we're leaving that in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @Josh Lee Kwai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.